So I'm putting this message out here to talk about what I see happening to the economy or the people with the change taking place as either a minimum wage increase to 15 bucks an hour, or the freedom dividend as proposed by Andrew Yang, which would basically be $1,000 a month to every United States citizen over the age of 18. Basically, that one's paid for through a VAT tax, that's a value added tax, which is essentially a sales tax at approximately 10%. Um, so let's jump on the minimum wage thing real quick first. The purpose of it is to compensate for the lack of wage growth adjusted for inflation over umpteen years ago. Over time, that should have been taking place. The problem is you can't just jump that high because there's two things that are going to happen. One is inflation, which has been argued to death. But the more important thing is automation and job loss. So the job loss is going to come from those who are simply companies that are just going to reduce the amount of workers and increase the output from the current workers they have. Or new jobs aren't going to be able to hire as many employees. And the other thing is, if nothing else, there's a push towards automation. Most of these skill sets that, most of these skills that are paying minimum wage are basically looking to automate away that job anyways. So it's not really going to be much of a shock that, well, now that the cost is even more for a human, let's push this idea of robots even sooner, faster. Because at a certain point, it's just more beneficial for the company to pay for a robot than it is to pay for a human. Those are the consequences I see happening with doing that. Now, the UBI, essentially, before you argue that inflation would happen, two things. One, we're not printing out new money to pay for the UBI. We're not paying for more money. We're not printing new money to pay for the UBI. Rather, we're circulating money that already exists, right? And you can also make it so that it won't apply to things like groceries or basic needs. And basically, that means every single Amazon transaction, every single transaction the company takes or whatever, there's a little bit of extra cost in that. And as a result, everybody gets an extra $1,000. Now, before the argument that, well, everyone's just going to jack up their price because they know you have extra $1,000 in your pocket, what makes this so useful is the fact that we live in a free market. So the free market dictates that if my landlord is going to raise my rent by $1,000 a month, I'm just going to go somewhere else where it's not $1,000 a month. I'm not also held to my current employment if they decide to lower my wage, or I can go somewhere else where maybe the cost of living is less and I can afford to take less money from my employer because I have the freedom dividend and it comes with me wherever I go. The landlord that tries to raise or jack up your rent is going to be at a loss because all it takes is for one landlord to literally do nothing and then be booked and have all their rooms filled in. It's very difficult to sort of jack up prices on your hamburgers when your competition across the street is just going to remain exactly as they are and not have this, $30 burger when yours are still the same cost. So we are price conditioned right now, and we'll obviously not just pay whatever because we have extra money inside of our pocket. Now, the other thing too is this is also money that's taking place inside of your local economy. So your local economy, you basically have the opportunity for new companies to be produced, and people to be employed. If you're going out and you got $1,000, you're going to be going out eating. You're going to be going out and doing like family events, whatever the case is. You're going to be going out and doing things, spending money in your local economy, which means that you've got extra cash in your local economy, which means that there's more people doing things, which means you need to hire more people. So now you're creating jobs, and then there's entrepreneurs who are essentially like, hey, people got money, man. Like, people got extra money. Like, how can I get that money? And so maybe they're going to start a business. It's really easy when you know that there's a lot of cash available and everybody has a lot of cash. Right now, we're all basically pretty strapped for cash and worried about just getting by. So the other difference too is going to be that uh, the minimum wage increase is really only going to be affecting and benefiting those who make up to $15 right now, versus the freedom dividend will not only benefit those guys and basically give them a wage increase that would be equivalent, well, depending on where they are, but it would basically give them that and then some. But it will also provide everybody with an added benefit. And once again, this creates the option for people to start becoming mobile where they want to live, right? If it's cheaper to live in Kansas or Arkansas and there's a job out there and you can afford places, like why would we not move to Arkansas? There's all these benefits as far as the mobility of that cash coming with you wherever you go. So the benefit of raising the minimum wage only makes sense when you don't consider all the effects it's going to have and how long of a positive effect, if it has one, how long is that positive effect actually going to last, especially with the rise on how things are being automated and just the nature of things with trying to build new businesses. Like it's there's a lot of cost involved, and there's other things that the small businesses should be worried about than being able to afford an increase to their employees. And if they have a good cause, right, those employees will be willing to work for a little bit less, subsidized with the freedom dividend, and because it's work that is meaningful, it's work that's important to them. And then as the company becomes more successful, they can raise their wage accordingly. If, however, it's a job that isn't meaningful, that nobody really wants to do, but they need money, they need cash. Well, now they have kind of options, because that $1,000 once again can go with you wherever you go. So that gives you a little bit of some breathing room, so that you can basically go to the employer, or sorry, rather the employer's going to come to you, being like, "Hey, work for me. I'll give you money," and you're like, "Well, it's got to be something reasonable, because if it's barely anything, I've got at least $1,000. There's somebody else who's willing to pay me more than that." And what you're creating is you're allowing the free market to do what it's supposed to do, which is create actual competition. So at a certain point, like this just, it doesn't make any sense to me why you would think that raising the minimum wage is the way to address the inequality with cash. I think Bernie Sanders is correct about the wage gap between the rich and the poor, and he's trying to address it in a way that traditionally might make sense, but it's the 21st century and a new, fresher, unique idea that has appeal across both sides, right? Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, you name it. There's a lot of appeal with the freedom dividend that the $15 minimum wage does not have. And there's also a lot of benefits that it can provide that simply the raising the minimum wage just won't have. The longevity of those benefits is also much longer than it could be with the minimum wage increase, right? So those are just my thoughts. If you still think that raising the minimum wage is actually more beneficial than a freedom dividend, please let me know why you think that in the comments down below. Otherwise, my assumption is probably that that the freedom dividend is beneficial, and simply saying leave a like if you agree. So thanks. Bye.